Well, welcome all to the San Fernando Valley Climate Reality Chapter meeting. I am very much looking forward to our guest speaker tonight. I happen to love looking at the sky and seeing stars, and darn, it just doesn't happen that often here in Los Angeles. So we're gonna hear from our guest speaker about if there's something we might be able to do regarding light pollution. And also there's a bill in California regarding dark skies. So there's lots to learn tonight. And thanks for being part of our monthly meeting. We always like to kick things off with a land acknowledgement. And I've asked our treasurer, Kim Neistat, to read that for us. And why don't you say hi, Kim, so people see you.
Hello.
As she reads, I'm going to share my screen so that you can follow along. Kim?
A land acknowledgement is a formal statement that recognizes and respects Indigenous peoples as stewards of this land and the enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. It acknowledges the history that has brought us to reside on this land, the colonialism that is present in our current systems, and calls on us to be mindful of our own present participation in it. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Tongva, the Quiche, Tatavian, and Chumash tribes.
So we're going to go ahead and segue into our program tonight, and I am going to hand off to Michelle Ringler, who is our chapter's vice chair, and she is going to introduce our guest. So Michelle, go ahead. And while you're doing that, just so you guys know, what we're going to do is turn off the chat while our speaker Jeremy talks. Then we're going to turn it back on once he's done, and we're going to invite you to add questions into the chat. Okay, so Michelle, go ahead.
Thanks so much, Diana. So this evening we have Jeremy Evans. Jeremy is a professional photographer and filmmaker in the Los Angeles area. He works as a camera operator and a cinematographer, and it has worked on Emmy-nominated television shows and documentaries for the Discovery Channel, HBO, PBS, the History Channel, the National Geographic Channel, and more. And when he's not working on the TV show and documentaries, he's often out backpacking or living off the grid and enjoying nature and dark skies. He's received numerous awards, including the Alfred I. DuPont Columbia University Award for Excellence in Broadcast and Digital Journalism. And he's a certified wilderness first responder and delegate for the International Dark Sky Association. Please welcome Jeremy Evans.
Hey,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let me share my screen now. Thank you very much for the intro, and I enjoyed hearing all your comments on what you've all done, like riding your bike and zero waste, and that's my daily life. Hate plastic, hate single use. I ride my bike everywhere. Did a trash pickup the other day, so I'm in good company here with you guys. I can tell already. So let me get my program going up here. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. And does everyone have the little the flyer that they made here for the program tonight on their screens?
Yes.
Okay, great. And also brighten up your screens if you have an easy way to adjust the brightness on your screens, because I'll be showing some darker images of the sky. So sometimes if your brightness is down for like brighter graphics and stuff on your device, you might not see the details that I might be pointing out during the program. So go ahead and brighten your screens if you can. And again, thank you for inviting me. Like I said, I'm in good company tonight. I'm a big environmentalist, and a lot of people might wonder, what does light pollution have to do with the climate? And it's very, very related. Everything's, as you know, intertwined and related. But I've been a big climate advocate my entire life. I adopted EV cars over 10 years ago. Zero waste, plant-based diet as much as I can. A native garden. I heard you talking about monarch butterflies. I think I counted over 30 monarchs in my yard that were born last year as a butterfly garden. I'm definitely have a good audience tonight. So I'm glad to be with some like-minded people. So people might want to know, what does light pollution have to do with the climate? Well, getting ahead of myself here. Sorry, I'm used to doing these live programs. It's only my second Zoom ever, so forgive me. So tonight's program, I hope this is very educational and enjoying for you. I will definitely hang around for some questions. You feel free to email me afterwards if you have any questions after the program. And I did mention brightening the screen. So here we go. A little bit about me. The introduction pretty much summed it up, but yeah, delegate for the International Dark Sky Association. And this is news that came out about a week ago. They're actually going to be rebranding the name to Dark Sky International. And they haven't announced it yet, but I checked with them and they don't mind me spilling the beans. It's not a big secret. They've been around for almost 35 years now as IDA, or International Dark Sky Association. I think Dark Sky International actually flows a lot better. And then when I was speaking with Diana last week about the program and just testing things, she referred to it as Dark Sky International. And I asked her, do you know about the name change? And she said, no, that's just what, I think that's what a lot of people assume that the group is called. So I expect they're going to be announcing the rebranding soon. So the slides and what I mentioned in tonight's program will mention IDA or International Dark Sky Association, but I'm going to start using the new name of Dark Sky International, because I don't want to confuse you as talking about one group and then all of a sudden you find out the name changed. So I hope that makes sense. We can skip the first responder mentioned, my degree in film and television. Yeah, when I'm not working, I'm out doing this most of the time, backpacking off the grid as much as possible. I like to backpack for up to 3 weeks at a time. The darker, the better, the more remote, the better. If I'm not backpacking, I'm usually out in my vehicle to the most remote location my car can get to. I love spending time out in the desert with my dog and my telescopes. It's I just can't get enough of the night sky. I fell in love with the night sky at a very, very, very early age. So what is light pollution? Basically, it's very simple, actually. It's wasted light that performs no function or task, such as sky glow. It is artificial light that goes where it's not supposed to go, like in your neighbor's window, on the side of your house, in the street, impeding you as you drive. Poorly lit security lights. It can also be lights without motion sensors or timers, and it can sometimes be a false sense of security, which I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then here's some appalling facts about light pollution. Artificial light does put your health at risk, and light pollution kills millions of birds each year, mostly due during the migratory patterns, they see the reflective city lights and cityscapes in large cities, and they just smash into the windows, just like when you hear about a bird that hits your window in your home. The reflective light in the glass definitely confuses the birds during their migration. A couple large cities like Philadelphia started implementing like a lights out policy where they encouraged as many businesses in the downtown district to turn their lights off during the migratory period. So a lot of cities are being more aware of how it affects birds. It also unnecessarily contributes to climate change. The most obvious way of that is wasted energy. And artificial light will disrupt the seasonal cycle of plants and trees. And I'll have a good example of that later in the program. And this is what's really scary to me. The sky glow in Los Angeles, where I assume most of the people, I know we got New York and a few people from the East Coast on here, and that's great. You guys have a lot of light pollution out there. And most of your big cities are within 200 miles of each other, so you just can't get away from it out there. But in Los Angeles, it is visible from over 200 miles away. And astronomers, astrophotographers, night sky enthusiasts, they just hate light pollution. Our biggest goal is to avoid lights as much as possible. And did you know, this is a scary fact that IDA's or Dark Sky International has been talking about for years, that 80% of the worldwide population can no longer see the Milky Way from their home. The natural night sky is a common universal heritage, yet it's rapidly becoming unknown to the newest generations. And this is a shot I took of it. This is like the core prime Milky Way photo. I took this in a dark sky park a while ago. And unfortunately, I'm one of those persons that can't see the Milky Way from my backyard. I took this photo over 20 years ago when I moved to Los Angeles. And I was a little shocked. I always joke now that the only stars we have in LA are the Walk of Fame on Hollywood and Highland and Vine and all that good stuff. But you can't see any stars in Los Angeles. I live in the suburbs, so I get a little bit of a dark sky, but nothing great. And I grew up in the Rocky Mountains, so I actually was that small percentage of people that could see the Milky Way from their backyard. I used to sleep out back in the backyard all the time on the lawn just to watch the night sky at night. This is a lot of most light in large cities have gotten much worse over the last 20 years. This is a photo I took of downtown LA in 2021, and that's about 20 years prior. So the skyline's definitely gotten larger, definitely a lot more lights. And so the problem's just definitely getting worse. So we're all trying to bring more awareness to light pollution. And this is something that always, when I read this a long time ago, when I first started studying astronomy, really stuck with me. But ancient civilizations used the night sky as a calendar. For example, Orion, as you see pictured here, was a signal when to plant and harvest your crops. It's a sign of winter and spring. So they knew when it was fall or harvest time in September and October, when you'd see Orion rising in the east just before sunrise, like really late in the night, right at dusk, you'd see Orion pop up in the east. And then the springtime, like right now, if you look outside after this program, you'll see Orion setting in the west, and pretty much Orion starts dropping below the horizon around darkness in the springtime. So Orion was a good signal of when to harvest, when to plant for the early civilizations and hunter-gatherers and early farmers. And this is always a funny story, and hopefully you guys can help me out with this. But in 1994 earthquake, I wasn't here at the time, but LA residents called 911 reporting the strange glow in the sky during a citywide power outage after the quake. And they were seeing the Milky Way for their very first time. And that's what the Milky Way looks like, about 160 miles away from Los Angeles. You can see the Los Angeles light pollution right on the horizon. This is my quickest go-to dark sky spot. I can get here in about 2 hours, and I do have LA light pollution on the horizon, but pretty much the rest of the way around me, maybe 270 degrees of it's pretty dark. So speaking of that 911 call, I've tried to find how they record 911 calls. I've tried to find that call. I've Googled and done tons of research. And so if anyone knows how to find old 90s 911 LA records, I'd love to get a recording of some people making that call. But I like to think it's true. I've heard the story multiple times, and I've kind of cross-checked it. But I'd love to hear some of those recordings. So, this is called the Bortle light scale. This is the easy way to measure a dark sky. And on the Dark Sky International website, there's like a little flow chart you can download. It's like a little choose your own adventure where it says, if you can see this, proceed to step 2. If you can see this, proceed to step 3. And if you can't see it, then it's go back to home or whatever. You can't go any further. And then when you reach that number, that tells you your Bortle light scale. So as you can see here, inner city sky, that's pretty much LA and most of around LA and the San Fernando Valley. I'm kind of in this suburban, bright urban sky here between 6 and 7 where I live. I'm up about 20 miles northeast of Burbank in the Santa Clarita Valley. So I can see bright objects in my backyard, Orion. I can see all the planets. Orion's pretty much the only constellation I can see with my light pollution. I can barely see Polaris. So I'm right on this 6-7 Bortle light scale. And another way to measure light pollution is an SQM, or a sky quality meter. And there's also an app, if you're interested in a smartphone app. I think it's a $20 or $30 app. And it works really well. I've compared it with some friends that have the SQM meter, and it works pretty well. And now you don't have to carry multiple devices around. But the SQM is kind of opposite of the Bortle light scale. With the Bortle light scale, the smaller the number, the darker the sky. And with the SQM meter, the larger the number, the darker the sky. So if you're in an 18 to 20, 21, 22 zone, that's pretty dark. 23, 24, they don't get much darker than that. So when you start hearing about astronomers or night sky enthusiasts talking about the Bortle scale or what's the SQM, you see someone setting up the telescope and they'll blurb out, oh, it's a 21, and that's really good. That's a really good number to have when you're out observing. Speaking of how far light pollution can travel, this is taken from the White Mountains above the Sierra Nevada. So if you see my mouse cursor here, this is the Sierra Nevada range right here. So you have the Antelope Valley here, and then Bakersfield, Fresno, Central Valley on the other side. And I'm up in the White Mountains, about 12,000 feet where I took this photo, looking down on the Owens Valley. And then you can also see there's Bishop, small town of Bishop, Big Pine, Lone Pine, Mojave. So that's how far, let's just give you, this is a really good example of how far light pollution can travel. You can see the light pollution from the Central Valley, like Bakersfield, Fresno area. It's washing out this lower part of the Milky Way. And then, of course, the wasted light goes up and eventually dissipates, and you can see more than Milky Way here. But that's just a scary example on how far light pollution can travel. Another example here, this is in Death Valley in the higher elevation where the Joshua trees are. This is Las Vegas to the left and LA on the right. So you can see, again, you're about almost a little less than 200 from Vegas and a little over 200 from Los Angeles from this location. So it definitely travels far. That's why we got to get a hold of it. Here's a light pollution map of the contingent United States. We'll dive in a little closer. Here's the great state of California. There's Los Angeles where my cursor is. And everywhere I like to go, like that Sierra Nevada, Eastern Sierra, White Mountains, Death Valley, That's all this gray black area here. And then out in Nevada, Nevada's really dark. The black parts, not the gray, are the darkest parts of the area. Here's North America, just to give you an idea of light pollution throughout the country. South America, a lot less, other than the large cities in Brazil and Chile. And then Africa is nice and dark, other than like I was just recently down here in South Africa before Christmas. Seems like it was recently, but I guess that was a long time ago now. In Cape Town, and then in Botswana. And Botswana is really dark, other than you have Johannesburg right here. So South Africa is nice and dark. Asia, a lot of light pollution in Asia, other than this Mongolia section here north of India. And then Australia's got some really great dark skies. I have a friend down there. He's always bragging about how he can see the Milky Way from his veranda or his backyard, as they say in Australia. So he rubs that in so that he can see it from his yard. But it's always raining and cloudy, so he doesn't have clear enough skies, but he's in a very, very dark spot. This is an alarming prediction. This is this chart's actually quite old now. I've been using this chart for over 10 years. And now we're so close to 2025, so I need to look for a newer version because I'd like to know if this trend is accurate. But you can see on the left, top left here, late 50s, and then the 70s, and then when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, this is kind of what the light pollution was like. And then now this is only 2 years from now, and this is the way the trends are going. It looks like this is what the light pollution map is going towards, just with all the urban sprawl and people wanting a piece of paradise out in the middle of nowhere. So all these smaller towns are getting much larger. And if they don't start practicing dark sky practices with their lighting plans, then it's really you're not gonna have any dark sky spots left, even in the small towns. So here's again that kind of like that light scale again. You've got your inner city sky and then the dark sky sites. And again, this is about kind of how it looks in my backyard. And probably most of the people in San Fernando Valley about like this. But then the closer you get to downtown LA, then it gets washed out. Talk briefly about a history of lighting. Street lighting, as we know it, began about 300 years ago. They were oil, like up here on this top right graphic, oil lamps placed on wooden poles. And by the early 18th century, the oil lamps were still used, but then they used cast iron fixtures for the light fixtures. And then in the beginning of the 19th century, we saw gas lamps come into use. And then by the early 20th century, by the 20th century, electric lamps were installed. That's when the whole Edison Tesla battle with AC and DC started in New York with the electrified street lamps. So that's the history of light pollution. How has it evolved now? Here's an example of what it's like now. Street lighting, roadway lighting, parks, stadiums, parking lots, landscaping, residential. I'll talk a lot about residential because that's something we can all do ourselves. Buildings, pedestrian and bicycle pathways. And of course, auto dealerships, which is what bothers me the most, because you drive by Auto Row and everything's washed out. I took this a few nights ago on the dealership row by my house, and it's just you can't see anything with these bright lights making the cars look pretty at night. And I get it, they need to have security, but there's a better way to do it. Purpose of outdoor lighting: provide a safe and secure environment at night, extend the use of parks and walkways into the night. It's nice to be out at night, want to feel safe. To enhance historic notable features, and to enhance travel on roads and intersections. I took this picture of the Colosseum back in 2008 on film when I was in Rome. I was working on a project in Rome, and I walked around with my film camera. I was really late to convert to digital. Took this photo, and I noticed this is pre-LED, so I'm sure the Colosseum is lit up much brighter now than it was in the late 2000s. Outdoor lighting should enhance visibility, not impede it. It shouldn't produce any glare. Be part of the total nightscape, not all of it. So it shouldn't dominate the scene, and not allow light to trespass on others' property. Outdoor lighting should also provide a safe and secure environment, create safe routes for traffic, cyclists, and pedestrians, and facilitate the extended use of outdoor spaces like a baseball diamond, tennis courts. There are a lot of tennis courts in my community, and they have really bright lights, and they usually turn off around 10:30. So at least they turn off at night. Non-shielded lights are very unsafe. I've seen, there's a gentleman I met at one of the festivals years ago. He's called the Dark Sky Ranger. He resides outside of Bryce, Utah, and he does dark sky programs and telescope tours out there. And he has a really cool video on his YouTube channel. And he dresses up as like a guy in a dark black cap and like a predator guy. And he's walking around in a situation like this. And you really can't see him coming with the light. You can jump out, and so you really can't see a predator, whether it's a wild predator or a human predator, when you're in a lighted situation like this. This is the nature path behind my house. I'm lucky enough to live all the land around my house and the backyard and the hillside, and we have a bunch of this is why I get to walk everywhere. There's a nature path everywhere. I do all my chores and walking on these paths. But at night, they turn these bright lights on. And they put these up about 20 years ago. And I was very upset when I saw the lights coming, because I enjoyed walking on these paths at night with my red headlamp if I needed it, or just let my eyes adjust. Because if you let your eyes adjust for 20 minutes, we're not like owls or anything like that, but we have really good night vision. So if you let your eyes adjust for 20 minutes and don't use any white light and just use a red light, you'll be surprised how well you can see in the dark. And I used to I've walked these paths here for 20 years. And yeah, when these lights came in, you can't see I have a lot of skunks and raccoons, bobcats, coyotes, and you can't see them. I'll turn a corner and the bright lights in my face, and then I'm like, oh, there's a skunk and his tail just moved up and I have to get out of the way. And I would have seen that skunk if I didn't have these bright lights messing up my night vision. It has a negative impact on wildlife. Animals and plants live by a rhythm based on a 24-hour cycle. So wildlife and fish can become disoriented by artificial light at night. Interferes with migration, mating, spoke about the bird migration earlier, foraging for food, and sleep. And we all love sea turtles. I have Dark Sky International uses a lot of sea turtles in their literature because everyone loves sea turtles. And this is pretty common knowledge, so forgive me if you guys have all heard of this, but when sea turtles hatch, if they see city lights, they'll confuse that as the moonlight or the stars reflecting off the ocean, and the sea turtles will go towards the land instead of the ocean. And then after they hatch, their life is cut very short when they see that artificial light confusing them. And then the way I've discovered a long time ago at my old property, I had with plants, I love to grow citrus trees. I have like 12 citrus trees in my yard. And when my old place, I had them in pots so I could move them around and take them with me when I moved. And one of my citrus trees was under a community light in my condominium complex. And so I didn't have control of that light. It was a sensor, so it came on at sunset and came on at sunrise. So my orange tree would always flower at the wrong time of year and then develop a small bud of fruit, and then the fruit would fall off. And this tree never produced any fruit because that artificial light threw off its cycle. And then when I moved it, it started producing fruit, and now it's in my backyard in the ground and doing very well and happy. But that was when I first discovered really firsthand how artificial light disrupt plant cycles. And this is a street by my house. I'm trying to work with my city right now to get these lights shielded. My houses are further down on this side, and this light here, sometimes when the trees are bare in the winter, this street light, if you can see my mouse here, blasts up the hill and right into my bedroom window. And even with blinds and blackout curtains, you can still kind of see the light coming in sometimes. And that kind of bothers us sometimes. So trying to get these lights taken care of. And I have a lot of owls that live in these trees, 3 breeds of owls, species of owls in my neighborhood that I know of, barred owls, screech owls, and great horns. And my one neighbor complains about rats in his backyard, and he has a ton of lights in his backyard, and they're on all night long because he wants to feel safe. So his backyard is really illuminated. And I told him, like, if you want to have less rats, and maybe turn your lights off, and maybe the owls might come in your yard and be a natural pest control. Sometimes they come into my yard, but I keep my yard pretty dark, and I see them hanging out on the fence sometimes. So I like to think the owls are doing their thing and help control the mice and rat population, because I do live in a kind of near a nature space. Negative impact on human health. Like I mentioned before, light trespasses in bedrooms, disrupts sleep patterns. Glare in our eyes can be blinding and reduce our night vision. When I'm walking down that trail, that white light, I can't see the skunks. I can smell them, then I see them, and it's too late at that point. And then new research is being done to discover the impacts on our biological clocks. And it also has a negative impact on astronomy, which is obviously one of my big passions. Light pollution negatively affects one of our greatest natural laboratories, the night sky. And this is an important industry that's given us a lot over the last 50 years. Cell phone technology, X-rays, MRI, all of our computer technology, imaging, satellite communications, and now my new arch nemesis is the Starlinks, because they keep launching more Starlink satellites, and they're getting in the way of my imaging at night. So this is a new, if you see on the right here, this streak, that's not an airplane. This is 50 Starlinks being deployed and going over my head in Death Valley. So a lot of my night sky imaging now, I get a big streak that goes across my screen when I'm imaging like a 5-minute exposure on a galaxy or a nebula. And the Starlinks just streak my shot. So they're definitely, and there's more and more of them being launched every few months. I know when the first round went out, everyone thought they were aliens because no one knew about them, and there was this big train going over the sky. So everyone's pretty much aware of the Starlinks now. And Dark Sky International has done a lot with SpaceX, trying to get them to reduce the reflectivity of the satellites. And about 4 years ago, I submitted a bunch of photos to them, and we sent them to SpaceX, or SpaceX heard about it, or I forget how it went exactly. And Elon came out and said, "Oh, I love astronomy. I love the night sky." And he tried to make them less reflective. And then there was, I think, a few batches that they launched that weren't as shiny, but you can't make them black because they'll overheat. So you got all these satellites buzzing around now at night, and that's definitely going to impact the night sky even more. So, speaking of lighting, this is basically the 4 main types of lamps. On the top right, you have the good old-fashioned incandescent, or what we call Edison bulbs, the actual filament inside. Nice quality, warm light, pleasant, non-toxic. They didn't last very long, and they used a lot of energy, and they created heat. And then technology evolved to CFLs, the little curly bulbs here, and fluorescent tubing over here. And they were great. They were cheap, energy efficient. They didn't last very long, and they had mercury and toxins in them, and you had to dispose of them properly. And you see them all the time not disposed of properly. So I'm glad those kind of got phased out. And then you have the sodium and the high pressure and low pressure sodium lights. They're the ones you often see in parking garages or industrial buildings. They cycle on and off. They kind of buzz and hum sometimes, and they flicker a lot. So that's a different type of fixture that's also kind of getting phased out, because now we have that great invention, LED, light emitting diode. And they're great because they're long lasting, energy efficient, they're toxic free. They're starting to get cheaper now, but there's a lot of pros and cons with LED lighting, because a lot of these newer, smaller towns, when they would start adding new fixtures, or even current towns when the LED came out, it was great to retrofit all the fixtures and streetlights and businesses to LED technology. But the first and second generation, third generation of LED lights that came out back when this technology was available to consumers, it was not very what we call quality of light. They're very white and very bright, uncontrolled, not dimmable. So it was the worst color temperature you could ask for, beyond the blue spectrum, where it was pretty much a white light. And then now there's dimmable ones, and if you get the right kind, they'll dim, they won't flicker. Now there's a whole selection of color temperatures now, and there's other fancier LEDs now where you can actually pick your color temperature. So LEDs come a long way, and it's a great technology to help reduce light pollution. However, when the early retrofits happened, it made light pollution much worse, because the early LED lights just spewed in the air uncontrolled and sent that white light way up. And that's why towns like Bishop and Lone Pine and some of these smaller towns that I showed you on the map with that sky glow have gotten worse over the last couple of years, because they just switched over to LED because it was easy, because they didn't have to switch so many fixtures over. Speaking of fixtures, type of luminaries, these are column mounted fittings. It's common for parking lots, street lights, pedestrian areas. Then you have these wall fittings that shoot down. Those are more common for security, but they're not shielded, so they shoot down, but the light still gets wasted on the side of the building and goes where it doesn't need to go. Other types of luminaries, these bollards, they're another type of pathway lighting. And then recessed lighting. A lot of people put on steps now, also recessed lighting in the ceilings of businesses. This is a good and bad example of recessed lighting. The top one, obviously, recessed lighting done badly. And then this other gas station on the bottom, you can see the less sky glow. It's not flaring the camera lens here. You can, it's obviously a night and day difference what shielded and unshielding does for recessed lighting. Here's a good example of fully shielded lighting at an airport. You don't see any light going into the sky. It's all on an angle going down towards the tarmac. And then this one's always a fun one. Unshielded light at ATM. I don't think anyone would feel comfortable using this ATM, because you can't see anyone coming towards you, but you are under a spotlight now, and anyone driving by can see you exposed all by yourself at that ATM. So that's not very. The light might make you feel safe, but that's a false sense of security, that ATM with all that bright light. This is a photo I did not take. This is I always love this photo. I got this off the Dark Sky International site, before and after a 2003 Northeast blackout, photo by Todd Carlson. 55 million people were affected by this blackout. And I'm sure you can guess what I do when the power goes out. I run outside with my camera and binoculars, and by the time we live in such a reliable infrastructure here, the power never goes out. I wish it would more, because it'd be nice to see a dark neighborhood every now and then. So what can you do? Get involved, contact your local officials. At the beginning of the meeting, we talked about Assemblymember Lee's bill that was vetoed last year, and then the new bill, AB 38, which looks like it's moving ahead slowly, but hopefully surely. I spoke to some people with the Audubon Society up in the Bay Area. They're the ones that lobbied for this first bill, and they're working on getting the second one passed. So I had a little Zoom meeting with the person involved in that about a month ago, and they kind of updated me on what was going on with AB 38. But it mainly is due to budget concerns on the existing buildings, and it sounds like they're making it a little easier to pass with maybe less they have to retrofit. But the problem I have with this is, why not make new construction require all dark sky approved lighting? Because a lot of new construction requires solar panels, where California is phasing out natural gas, and I think in 2030, I'm not sure if you can get natural gas appliances anymore. So with all the solar panels and solar farms and natural gas prices so high, we're getting off of that. And so if you're going to buy or build a new house, and you have to have solar, and you can't have natural gas appliances anymore, then why not require dark sky friendly lighting and fixtures on the home as well? That's just my perfect world, of course. But other thing you can do is come up with a lighting plan. I'll talk about that a little later. Inspect the lighting around your home. If you're remodeling, if you just moved, if things are broken, consider a retrofit. Use dark sky friendly lighting. Talk to your neighbors. Share your lighting plan. I'll show you what I did to my house in a little bit. And people like it. People have asked about it, and I've offered to help them, but I don't think they want to go make that plunge just yet. Visit a dark sky park or community. I'll show you an example of those in a little bit. And hopefully you'll be inspired to do more. Check out or join Dark Sky International, soon to be formally known as International Dark Sky Association. There's their website. I'm sure that'll change in a couple of weeks. Everything you're seeing tonight on my program, you can download from their website. Like there's postcards that show what I talked about: the shielded light, energy efficient bulbs, usually 5 watts or less, which is really easy now with LED technology. There's that shielded down light, direct them down. Use timers or sensors when possible. Only light what you need. No reason to have something on all night long. Of course, a security light's great if it has a motion sensor, but there's no reason to let it go all night. Choose warm bulbs. Dark Sky International recommends bulbs in the 2700 degrees Kelvin to 2500 degrees Kelvin range. And here's that scale. This is the Kelvin range I talked about earlier. Those new LED bulbs that came out, they were up here in this white blue light section here. And then they weren't dimmable, but now you can kind of pick any color temperature you want. So if you want to do dark sky friendly lighting in your neighborhood or in your home, or if you want to talk to your community about it, recommend these warmer bulbs. In my old property that's now a rental property, I used to be on the HOA board there, and we did a retrofit there, and I couldn't get the board to agree with dark sky fixtures, but I was able to get the board to vote and change all the light bulbs out, because we had really white blue light bulbs going on. And then so after we remodeled and repainted and did new carports and whatnot, I got all the light bulbs down to 2700 degrees. So that was one of my board accomplishments at my rental property, that I got all the light bulbs nice and warm. So they're not shielded, but at least it's not blue harsh light anymore, which is still better for your eye and better for wildlife and plants than that blue light. So here's the light fixtures I was talking about. If you're going to go out there and buy a new light or go to a big box store, look for the dark sky approved fixture down here. There's all the IDA approved lighting has a seal of approval on it. And here's a little closer. That's what the box looks like. Has one of these somewhere in the corner, and that's a typical shielded fixture. And if you're shopping for these lights, all you need to do is, if you're shopping online, there's filters now on all the filters where you pick color, material, and built-in bulb, whatnot. There's most sites, like Amazon, Home Depot, Lowe's, all the contractor sites, they actually have a box you can check to make it dark sky friendly or IDA approved lighting, and then it'll filter out all the other lights, and you can just see what one, and find. A lot of people say, "Oh, I don't like the way the fixtures look." They just think they're the old boring chrome or silver downlights. They're actually quite attractive now. This is a nice oil bronze style dark sky light. So a lot of people complained about the look of the fixture, but there's a lot of choices out there now. A little more details on the fixtures. So here the unshielded one on the left, unacceptable, very bad. This one's got a little top on it, a little beanie or hat on top of the light. So it's stopping, you can see my cursor, it's stopping this spillage. And this one's got a little bigger of a cap, so it's just kind of cut off horizontally. Then a fully shielded one. Then of course, this one here, the best one is a timer, a shielded light with a timer or motion sensor. Here's an example of those lights again, unshielded, but this has a little cap on it versus fully shielded. So a few years ago, I decided to build a little example of that I've used in a lot of my programs. So I took a lighting stand, took a piece of wood, painted it black, and I mounted a shielded light and an unshielded light on this piece of wood. And I drove out to my dark sky site, Red Rock State Park, the one that's you can see the sky glow from 160 miles away. And I hooked it up to my inverter on my car and powered up the lights. And this one here, you can see the left one is the unshielded light spilling up. And then the right one is the shielded light. And you can't really tell it's on because the unshielded light's kind of washing it out. And then look what happens now. Turn off the shielded light. You can't even really tell. There's both. And that's just the shielded. And you can see it's still spilling away. Now look what happens when you go with the shielded light. See the big difference there? I'll show you one more time. And you can still see the ground. You can still safely walk. It's not impeding your vision. It's not blinding you in the eye. It lets your eyes adjust to the night, so you can actually safely go about in the dark without stumbling onto anything you don't want to stumble upon. And of course, the best thing to do is light what you need, and only when you need it, and turn it off. So that's how I like it. But in a perfect world, there'd be no lights at all. But I'm realistic also. As a society, we need to learn how to use lighting more responsibly, in my opinion. So about 4 years ago, I moved into my new house in 2019. And this is how it came with all the lights. You can see how it's spilling over here on my neighbor, and this light's spilling over here and all over up in the sky and on the grass. And so in 2020, I decided to have the house painted. So I thought that was a good time to replace my lighting. So instead of having the painting company have to, take everything up, I just ripped off the lights, and then I was able to install new ones afterwards. So I got the new paint, and you can see the difference, what dark sky lights do versus unshielded lights just around my property. Same with the backyard. That was with the old lights. You can see it spilling on my neighbor's wall there. And then now there's no spillage going into their windows. And now I can use my telescope outside at night if I want to in my backyard. So big difference on fixtures. And everywhere I go, all I notice is fixtures, and it drives me crazy when I see unshielded fixtures. So need more inspiration? Visit a dark sky park or location. Here's a definition of dark sky parks. I know I'm kind of running along, I always do, so I'm going to speed up here, but dark sky sanctuaries, there's dark sky parks, or what we call IDSPs, and then also IDSCs, International Dark Sky Communities. And Dark Sky International has a dark sky finder page on their website. You can zoom in on all these areas and find a dark sky site near you, or if you're traveling, you want to find a dark spot. Here's the lower 48 again, all the dark sky parks you have in the middle, in the Rocky Mountain area. And there's more of the West Coast. Here's California. Now in California, we have 9 national parks, but only 2 of them are international dark sky parks. That's Death Valley here in Joshua Tree. And then those dark sky communities I mentioned, Julian and Brago Springs, they're down here as dark sky communities. And the very first dark sky park was actually in southern Utah called Natural Bridges National Monument. And that's the very first dark sky park in the world. And this is an image I think we used on the flyer. This is an example of how dark the skies are in this dark sky park. And then if you go into a community, you'll usually, some of the communities have a welcome, and it lets you know you're in a dark sky community. So I hope to move to a dark sky community someday. If you're visiting a dark sky park, most of the parks have a plaque near the visitor center. Capitol Reef's one of my favorite dark sky parks. The Milky Way is great in Capitol Reef. In the Dixie National Forest in southern Utah, Cedar Breaks National Monument. That's a dark sky park. You can see how dark it is there. One of my favorite dark sky parks is Dinosaur National Monument on the Utah-Colorado border. It's really dark there. I go there all the time. I try to go there once a year. It's really fun. A lot of great dirt roads you can explore, and disperse camp out in the middle of nowhere and have zero light pollution. So that's what it's like in Dinosaur. I love going to the north side of Grand Canyon, the Two Weep area. That's a dark sky park. And then also the National Monument to the north of Two Weep is a dark sky national monument. So you got a dark sky park and a dark sky monument right next to each other. So it's a nice little dark sky corridor. And here's how dark the skies are on the north side of Grand Canyon. Not the north rim, but on the northern edge near the Two Weep area. So, and I recently visited Black Canyon of the Gunnison, my new favorite dark sky park in Colorado. It's really dark there. I had a little bit of a setting moon, so I couldn't get perfectly dark skies there, but it was still a nice visit. And then Death Valley's one of California's, I think that's California's first, it was before Joshua Tree, International Dark Sky Park back in 2013. So if you're in a dark sky park, you might find me. I attend the festivals there. There's me and a friend of mine, Mike Shaw. He's another dark sky delegate. A lot of us go to the festivals and do dark sky talks there. So if you're interested more about dark skies, check out darksky.org. The website's going to stay the same. They're just going to change the name to Dark Sky International. And you can download postcards. You can ask, they'll mail you postcards, things to give your neighbors, letter templates. If you have a neighbor whose light might be bothering you, you can download pre-formatted Word templates to kind of help you engage your neighbor in a more political way versus just writing them a nasty note. So they have a lot of great resources, and a lot of the information that I did not photograph in this program is available to anyone to download, and you can actually do your own program with all their resources to your local community if you're interested more about advocating for dark skies. And I think can I show you a few benefits of dark skies, or should we start wrapping it up here soon? I think I've gone 35 minutes.
You're okay. Keep going. It's fine.
Okay. Well, now the fun part begins. Now that school's over and I'm done showing you what you can do to have a better dark sky community or home or city or backyard, I'm going to show you what I do when I'm not working, and I'm always out enjoying dark skies, whether I'm backpacking or driving my vehicle as far away as possible. So this is again Capitol Reef. I mentioned how dark Capitol Reef is. This graining phenomenon you see here, this isn't light pollution. This is called air glow. And when you're in an area so dark, you can your naked eye can't pick it up, but your naked eye can see the Milky Way in pretty good detail. But then the camera sensor is more sensitive than your eye, so you can pick up this sky glow or air glow. Not sky glow. Sky glow bad, air glow good. Air glow turns up in long exposure photographs. It's a kind of ghostly ripples. It's kind of like an aurora-like effect, about 10 to 20 degrees above the horizon, and it's just an excitation of atoms and molecules like aurora. And so if it's really dark and you start seeing that green glow, that's a good thing. That means that you're in a really dark spot. This is some air glow up in the White Mountains. And if you're in a dark sky area, you can actually see a lot of things in our cosmos, in our galaxy, that you might not even know existed up there. One of them is the Andromeda Galaxy. There's this little fuzzy egg-shaped galaxy right here. And it's actually the nearest spiral galaxy to our own Milky Way. It's 2.5 million light years away with 100 billion stars. And under a dark sky, you can actually see this with your naked eye, or naked eye meaning without any kind of optical aid. If you know how to find it, you actually see this little fuzzy ball in the sky if you're in a dark sky spot. Dark skies are also required and best for meteor showers. I go out for a lot of the big meteor showers. Lyra's, I think, comes up next week. Geminids in December. The Perseids in August is a big one. This is the Perseids meteor shower that I go out every August. If you're into meteor showers, check out my YouTube channel. I have a lot of meteor shower videos. One of the best meteor showers I ever saw was the 2018 Perseid meteor shower. I photographed it for 9 nights straight on a 10-day backpack. Then I'm going to show you a quick video just highlighting the dark skies Death Valley has to offer, and what you can actually see when you get out there away from that light pollution. So I have a bunch of videos like that on my YouTube channel if you want to see more of them. They're kind of fun to watch if you're in the mood for like a cinematic planetarium kind of experience. Milky Way is great in Death Valley in the early spring. We talked enough about Milky Way. I'll skip ahead. One of my favorite dark sky spots up in the White Mountains with the Bristol cones on Orion. Another star trail from Death Valley. One thing I can do in where I live in my backyard is I can do planetary observing because the planets are a lot brighter and a lot closer. So you can actually do that with a little bit of light pollution. So when Jupiter's in opposition, I'm able to pick up the planet and its 4 Galilean moons in my backyard. So that's about the one thing I can do with the light pollution I have. But you need a dark sky spot for deep sky objects like Andromeda Galaxy that I mentioned earlier. It's 2.5 million light years away. This galaxy's 26 million light years away. You can't see that with the naked eye. You need a telescope and a dark sky site because light pollution will just wash all that out, and your telescope won't even be able to see these galaxies. Same with the Pleiades cluster, globular clusters like Antares, Milky Way galactic core. You can't see that in light pollution. Some tighter shots of the Lagoon Nebula within the Milky Way. Different planets and galaxies out there. There's hundreds of galaxies unknown. My favorite galaxy is Bode's Galaxy. There's 2 here, Bode's and Cigar Galaxy. This one, the Virgo cluster. There's actually, I've counted 18 different galaxies in this image, and all these little fuzzy balls are actually galaxies. And none of this is stuff that's being completely lost to society right now because you don't have a dark sky area. You can't enjoy these things if you're into astronomy. Leo triplet, same thing. North American Nebula completely washed out if you don't have any light, if you have light pollution. This is the one nebula you can actually see in the city. Barely you can see Orion Nebula. That one's pretty bright where you can see it through light pollution. Horsehead Nebula down here. Flame Nebula, that's kind of within the Orion Nebula. That's really hard to image in it if you're under light pollution. And then California Nebula, this is a fun one because most of us are rightfully named. You can't see this in any dark sky areas at all. Your telescope just won't pick it up. It's washed out. And then especially comets. There's a lot of comets in the news lately, and they always said, go to a dark sky site if you have to see some comets, if you want to go view the comet. And this is kind of what got me into astronomy in 1996 when comet Hyakutake came into our solar system. There was probably one of the first night astro images I ever took. And then we had Comet Nearwise in July 2020. That was exciting. You had to go to a dark sky spot to see the tail. And there's Comet Nearwise over a Bristol cone. And then we just had a comet last January and February, Comet E3, where you had to be in a dark sky spot. It wasn't visible in a city. And finally, this is the last slide I'll show you. Comet E3 was passing. We got Mars up here and Aldebaran on the bottom. And again, you don't even know if there's a comet if you're in dark sky, if you're not in a dark sky park. So I would love one day to be able to go in my backyard and actually see comets and galaxies and nebulas without having to drive at least 2 hours to a dark sky spot to enjoy one of my passions, which is obviously dark skies. So if you want to follow what I'm doing, some of my adventures, where I'm going, I got a lot of trips planned, a lot more astronomy to do. My socials, my website, evansdp.com, and then my YouTube and Instagram are the same, Jeremy Evans Photography. And I'm not very active on social media. I try to be, but it's just kind of not my thing. But if you have any questions, email me, hit me up on social media, and I always respond eventually, I promise. So, and check out my website. I sell prints on there, my online shop. And don't forget, Dark Sky International Dark Sky Week is coming up next week. So I hope I've inspired you to go out and enjoy some dark skies and not only celebrate Earth Day and John Muir Day and Dark Sky Week, all the great things we have for the planet in April. So again, thank you so much for your time, and I'll turn it back to you, Diane. So.
Jeremy, that was just fantastic. I could just sit here and watch these. It makes me want to go outside and actually see a dark sky, but it's a little
Good.
It's not just step outside and see it. So I want to invite folks to put some questions into the chat. I've opened that up, and while they're doing that, Jeremy, I have a couple of quick questions.
Mm-hmm.
In the presentation, you
mentioned. Should I close my program and should I stop sharing my screen and? Right
yeah,
now?
I think you can stop sharing your screen.
Okay, sure.
And so we can just chat with you. Perfect. And you mentioned the SQM machine that measures. You said that there's an app that does something similar. Did you say what the name of the app is?
Dark Sky Finder.
Okay.
And I think I paid $20 for it. I don't know if it's available on Android, but I know it's available in the Apple App Store. And if you can't find it, email me and I'll share the link to download the app. Okay. It's quite handy because my friend Mike Shaw, who I mentioned in the photo of us at the festival, he had an SQM, and we were pretty much the same. We were calibrating them together, and they were pretty equal. So and there's also you could Google some do it yourself. You can build one your own. There's kits there's instructions out there to build your own too. They're anywhere from $100 to $200, but the app seems to work well enough for me.
Okay, and then you mentioned it, I think, but like where's the closest dark sky park? If we wanted to take that 2-hour drive, go sit
Well-
under dark sky, where's the closest one to LA?
Well, to me, it's not a designated dark sky spot, but it's Red Rock State Park off the 14 before the 395 when you're heading out to the Eastern Sierra. That's the one where I showed you the sky glow from 160 miles away. It's not a dark sky park. It could be. There's one light. There's only one light there, and that's a kiosk when you drive in. But it's not shielded. It's really white. And I've left notes, and I've tried to get it. The rangers are never there, and I left notes, and I will replace it on my own dollar. But I'll probably, it's a liability thing. I probably can't touch their fixture, but I've offered to help them fix it. There's one light in the park, and if you drive into the campground, you can usually block it with the hills, but it's visible sometimes. But it's not an official park, but that's where I go. Anza Borregos is kind of far from me. I'm being selfish.
I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll turn to those in the chat. But it's because
the closest for most of us is Death Valley and Joshua Tree for an actual dark sky park.
Okay. So if someone wanted to try to take pictures, I mean, not being professional like you are, is there a camera that, an amateur could use to capture some? I think I shared my iPhone.
Yeah. I was just I made me think of that right away.
Yeah.
But soon the iPhone will do all that, and I won't have anything to talk about anymore. But, but yeah, I mean, like you said, that your iPhone picture that you took a few weeks ago, amazing what the 12, 13, and mainly the 13 and the 14 is as far as what they produce at night. Very grainy, but it's showing up. It's a lot more sensitive, and you're picking up a lot more detail in the sky. If you were to put your phone on an actual mount, and that would make a big difference. But then the next step up is you don't have to have a big fancy camera. It's more about the faster lenses and about having manual control, meaning a bulb or a manual setting, no autofocus. You need to be able to pick all your exposures manually and have a good tripod and a fast lens. And most of my programs that I do that are longer, I'll talk about the photography side too on some of the basic equipment. But yeah, you can. Cameras are like iPhones now, so everyone's getting new ones all the time. So you can get a lot of great deals on used cameras that are wonderful. One of my favorite cameras is like 8 years old.
You're doing a presentation at Yosemite soon, right?
Yeah, that'll
go to Yosemite and get the
I do that for the Sierra Club every year, and I'm doing 2 programs there. And one of them I'll dive into more of the photography side too, and show a lot more detail, like what I showed you briefly at the end here.
And do you know of any communities? You've done a lot of work yourself on this, and given us reasons why we should do the same. Do you know of any communities who have put together a dark skies ordinance or whatever it might be called? And I know Assemblymember Lee is moving that forward. Are you familiar yourself?
Oh,
yeah.
I follow that news a lot because I'm trying to decide where I want to retire. But like Malibu, I won't retire there because I can't afford it, and it's not dark, and there's too much humidity in the air. But not a good place for an observatory. But Malibu's been working on city ordinances for years, and I think that's going pretty well. Like Torrey, Utah, which is the gateway town to Capitol Reef, that's a dark sky community that I mentioned. They got designated, and of course you have Anza Borrego and Julian that are already communities. The other town, Kanab, Utah, they've been working on becoming a dark sky community. I've been in talks with people in Bishop, trying to give programs and get more awareness in Bishop, because Bishop could become a dark sky community. So there's a lot of towns that are working towards it, because it also, astrotourism is really popular now. I did this 25 years ago, 30 years ago in parks, and people laughed at me like, what are you walking around with a tripod for in the dark? There's nothing to see. And now a lot of parks that never got visitation, like Capitol Reef, are getting a lot more visitation now because of that dark sky draw. So communities are doing it too, because it's good for the economy as well. Great. It helps balance out the load with all the national parks that are overcrowded.
That's fantastic. Well, keep us posted on where you decide to retire, so we'll know.
Yeah, I looked at some dark sky spots in Colorado last October, but I like California.
Okay, good. Well, we do have some questions in the chat. Sharon was asking, what do you think are the best legislative approaches to reducing light pollution? New construction or requiring a seal?
I mean, that's the letters I've written. I mean, I've written letters to White House multiple times about the environment, about light pollution, about a federal lighting ordinance. I've written Jerry Brown and Newsom multiple times, just just love some executive action, like, hey, all new construction. Or I've emailed my local leaders about why can't new construction have it. like I mentioned earlier, like with the solar panels and phasing out natural gas appliances. It should be part of the city codes in most places, and that's what the ordinances are in smaller towns. It's part of the code. Sometimes it's an honor system, but sometimes it's more of a code. But it's more about getting people involved and just agreeing to work together on it. But that's the hardest thing, is dealing with getting through that brick wall with the local legislature. Because I mean, I write letters all the time, mail them, email them, both. And sometimes I get a response, but it's usually just a generic response thanking me for my concern for the environment. So it's really hard, and that's where I rely on people like you and other advocates out there to help get through to city officials. Like there's I haven't met her personally yet. I think she's on the call tonight. A newer dark sky delegate with Dark Sky International, and we're working on getting a local chapter going in Los Angeles. And I think she's made some contacts with some local LA elected officials. And
Well, and definitely reach out to us if you want to, if you need some folks or want to build that chapter. Carl was asking, and he may have missed this, but the advice on the best type of bulb for minimizing light pollution.
Oh yeah. There was that. There was that postcard that had the color temperature, and then the 5 watts, which is like equivalent to, I think, a 40-watt standard bulb, like when you see the wattage comparisons. And a lot of light bulbs don't give you the Kelvin scale. That's a professional thing that I use in my lighting, in my job lighting and doing camera lighting. We always set cameras by a Kelvin scale and use lights by a Kelvin scale. So not a lot of light bulbs will have that on the box, but the equivalents, the consumer terms, are cool white, cool light, which is like an outdoor light. That's 5,600 degrees Kelvin. The cool white, or CWP, cool white plus, those are like the old fluorescents, like shop lights and garage lights. Those are usually 4,300 degrees. Then you have white white and soft white, like a reading light or a bedroom light or a bathroom light. And those, so when you're buying a bulb, if you don't have that Kelvin scale, just look for something that it's either a soft white or white or warm white. And those are usually in the warmer 32 to 2,700 degrees. And there's displays at Home Depot. You can push the button now and it will show you the difference between a blue light and a warm light. But it's usually on the box, but sometimes they don't use that scale. But they're all dimmable now. Buy a dimmable one, buy the warmer color temperature, and start playing around with your fixtures and get it pleasing to the eye and pleasing to the night sky.
That sounds great. We have somebody on the call actually from a climate reality chapter in Santa Barbara. And Brigitte, because your question is a little more complex, why don't you go ahead and voice that? Just take yourself off mute and. Ask her to unmute, and
there we go.
There you go.
So yeah, I live near a open space that's about 25 acres, and there's a bicycle path, which we are now calling multi-use paths because they're compliant with the American Disabilities Act and designed for multiple uses. There's one on each side of it. And they want to connect the two along a fairly busy road. And there's been a lot of opposition to locating this path because of the natural area there. I think it will probably move forward, it looks like, but I know that there's probably going to be some concern about lighting, especially with bikes traveling on there and people walking on it. And so I was just wondering if you had any recommendations for that.
So there's no lights on the path now? The way it is now, it's not lit?
Right now, there's no path.
Okay, this is the nature space that's going to become a path.
That will have a path along the side of it, along the edge of it, and to be completely informative here, it'll be pretty close to the road, which is already lit.
So there's residential lighting on the street already?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's light posts along the road, but
I assume they're just regular standard non-shielded light posts, or are you lucky enough to have shielded ones there?
After your talk, I will go out and take a look.
You'll notice them now.
Because I don't,
noticing that. Yeah.
I don't
Welcome to
usually
my world.
go there. Even
Yeah.
though it's close to my house, I usually stay home. So, but I will go and take a look because now I'm really curious.
Well, to answer your question, if I would, I mean, obviously when there's something like this going on, it's open to like city plans or hopefully public hearing. I'm sure or request a public hearing about the project. And I would get a hold of whatever contractor the city's hired to do that and find out what their lighting plan is. And if they don't know what a lighting plan is, explain what a lighting plan, like what I mentioned, and you're welcome to ask for photos, and I can give you examples of my pathway that's lit that I can't see the skunks at night. And I would definitely be sniffing around that site trying to find out what they're going to do with lighting. But hopefully they don't light it. It doesn't sound like it needs to be lit if it's near the road. There's enough ambient spill from the road probably, in my guess. But I would start. I would ask for a public hearing because I think you can do that with any kind of new construction or any kind of project in your community.
Oh, there's been tremendous output of comments and stuff, but not much has been said about lighting. And
that's good. Maybe they're not lighting it, but now's the time to bring it up before it's too late.
Right. I'd like to be proactive.
Yeah, that'd be great. I hope it goes unlit or shielded. Yeah, I'm sure the owls and the night critters love that area, so I'd hate to see it washed out with light.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, good luck with that. I'd love to check it out one of these days.
Do we have any other questions for Jeremy? We are just coming to the end of our program time, but this has been so interesting, just fascinating.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope you can leave tonight noticing more in your community and more. And don't forget to look up and notice what you're missing out there.
Absolutely. All right. What's the part where I ask everybody to unmute themselves and actually express your appreciation for Jeremy being here today? So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure being here.
When is your Yosemite speech? Because our presentation, that's we should all like meet you there.
When is it?
Yeah.
If you go to it's
May, I think, right?
First weekend in May, Friday and Saturday night, 2 different programs. If you go to my website under the more info tab, it drops down to upcoming events, and you'll see this program on there and my future programs. And the one next is Yosemite. I think I forget which one it is, but one is an astronomy program like this, but more involved in photography, and the other one is just a history program about the park because I'm also a big history buff. So.
Good.
And then Dark Sky Festival for Sequoia and Death Valley next winter. So yeah, it's all on my website if you want to come to a program or branch out.
You mentioned next week is the Dark Sky, I guess, yearly. Can you tell us, if somebody wanted to attend that, can we just sign up on the website?
Yeah. People
like they have webinars or what?
Yeah, exactly. And that'll be on the Dark Sky International site. And then delegates like myself are encouraged to host an event or do something for Dark Sky Week. So when Cheryl first asked me about doing this program back in December, I believe, I wanted to time it for April because the Dark Sky Week is always the new moon in April. So it always shifts by a few weeks due to the moon calendar. And so this was my contribution to Dark Sky Week. And last year, I think I did a little workshop. But if you go to Dark Sky International site or even search anything online for International Dark Sky Week, there'll be star parties. There's probably, if someone's got a festival going on, I'm sure there'll be other webinars, meetings, kind of people like me, other advocates doing their own version of Dark Sky Week. So it's definitely it's a big group, and everyone just kind of chips in and helps educate people about it.
Right.
Times in with Earth Day and all the other good stuff. So it's a good time to do it.
This was just amazing, the presentation, the pictures, your photography is gorgeous. And, to be exposed to the fact that there are things we can do and that the result would be really beneficial, not to just us, but to animals and our psyche. So that's great.
Climate, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeremy, so much. We really appreciate you being here.
It was fun. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for attending. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. All right, guys. Thanks a bunch. Have a good month, and we look forward to seeing you at one of the upcoming events.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.